Welcome everybody, good morning. Welcome to Cool Johnson 200. My name is Martha Matsuoka. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Urban Environmental Policy. And I am thrilled to be here today to welcome you all to what we are considering our inaugural launch of the Annette and Vincent Dungan Lectureship on Energy and Environment here at Occidental College. It's a really exciting time to be launching this great initiative. On this day, this is the day before Earth Day, and nearly 40 years ago, right, since the first Earth Day happened in 1970, right? So being able to launch this new initiative here on campus gives us great hope that we can provide a new focus here at Occidental College that focuses on energy and the environment and taps into all our research and activism and learning here at Occidental. I want to first thank profusely Louise Edgerton. Where's Louise? Where are you, Louise? Oh, there she is. Okay, Louise, okay, perfect. Louise Edgerton and her husband Brad have been generous supporters of the college, and their family has a long history in philanthropy and social change. The Edgerton Foundation has a major interest in exploring new ideas to deal with our most critical and pressing environmental issues, how to utilize energy wisely, and at the same time prevent damage to the environment and climate. Toward this end, the Foundation believes that college campuses are a really prime place to start that process and to provide the great leadership. This certainly resonates with some of the principles we have here at Occidental College, right, about public service, about learning, and about active leadership in the future. I have no doubt that this set of principles actually has to do with the fact that Louise herself is an Oxy alum, the class of 1967, and her mom Antoinette, after whom this lectureship is founded, was in the class of 1933. So we should feel that spirit in this room as the generous gifts of Louise and her husband Brad are passed down to us now here at Oxy. I'm thrilled today that our inaugural speaker is Andy Lipkis. Andy is a friend, a colleague, a mentor, and an inspiration to me as a younger person, young but younger person coming to this movement. Andy is the founder and president of TreePeople, which is a nonprofit urban forestry organization here in Los Angeles. Now, as I was thinking about this, I thought, God, it's a really kind of a technical title for someone who, to me, is certainly a title that doesn't capture any sort of way the vision and the leadership that Andy has provided to the environmental movement. And what kind of organization he has actually created in order to bring us into the future. Andy was 15 years old, right, when Earth Day first happened in 1970. Is that right? Okay, 15 years old, right? He and his friends had just gone to summer camp in San Bernardino Mountains, looked at some of the trees, and recognized that they were dying because of the air quality with smog here in the LA basin. Right? Now, they came home incensed, indignant, and full of that energy that only 15-year-olds could have, right? And they came home and they dug up a parking lot, right, nearby. Right? The hope was that if you dig up this parking lot and plant trees, they would do their part in addressing what they had just witnessed, the environmental destruction in the mountains. There was one problem, however, that once the parking lot got dug up, there was no cash to pay for trees. Right? So they started on a campaign. They wrote a letter to the LA Times. Catch me if I got this right. Okay, but this is a good start. Okay. Good. Okay. So the letter goes to the LA Times asking the LA Times readership to donate their milk money to help buy trees in this initial effort to restore the urban canopy here in Los Angeles. Today, Andy and TreePeople, well, let me back up. So letters started pouring in, right? People were really compelled by the story of Andy and his friends and their description of what was happening to our environment, that donations started flooding, right? 15 cents, 35 cents, 50 cents, all of it to buy trees for Los Angeles and to support Andy's new campaign. So today, Andy and TreePeople have inspired and organized thousands of people here in LA and around the world to reconnect us with our environment in which we live and build bridges across race and class and culture and neighborhood lines in order to create and build a movement for environmental sustainability. So we think about this, right? Who knew that Andy and his 15-year-old friends would turn those donations of milk money into a sophisticated, world-renowned center called the Center for Community Forestry, based here in Los Angeles. Who knew that in 40 years, here in LA, the center of cement and car culture, that the environmental movement would be rooted literally in Beverly Hills and South LA, in all corners of the city and the county, and also globally. Who knew that young people, well, this is no surprise really, right? But that young people who have anger and indignation about what's going on in the world could also be tethered to hope in a vision for something bigger, could lead a movement for greening and social change. It's this sort of vision and this sort of hope and this sort of activism that I think we need now, today. We have most incredible environmental degradation. Issues of climate change are suddenly on the public policy center for the debate. We have the highest level of unemployment we've seen in this country for decades and decades. There are numbers of ways you can look and find issues about conflict across race and class and culture that pit people against each other. On the other hand, we have this vision and a set of activism that's new and rising, that links environmental restoration to social justice, that transcends from local to global. And I have to say, I look at Lipkis as sort of a leader in that big movement of ours. Lucky to have him here in LA. As someone who comes to the environmental movement from a social justice background, Andy has been very patient and very visionary in terms of helping me link up social justice with a broader environmental agenda. Medora Carter, many of you know, is the founder of Sustainable Bronx. She's a MacArthur Genius Award winner. And she just produced a great audio clip that we'll share with the audience after the talk. But basically she said that Andy Lipkis was a tree, he would be a mighty redwood. So I agree wholly, and I ask us to give a big warm welcome to Andy Lipkis.
I use a timer, so, because I want to talk for days. Wow, thank you, Martha. It is really, really, really a pleasure to be here with you. I've been on this campus a couple times, but it was usually at night, and I never got to see how incredible it was. What a resource you have, and just to see who the student body is fills me with inspiration. So hopefully I'll get to reflect a little bit back to you. It is really an honor to be here, given the work that this campus is famous for that goes way beyond LA, from Bob Gottlieb's work and Martha's to the fact that the school is rooted in a social justice, social activism kind of mentality and DNA, speaks volumes and sets you up for the challenges that we face. I think your introduction was really, really great and really useful, because I don't have to tell all the stories that I was going to be telling. I'll update a few. But you all sit in very, very powerful position. We are at quite a crossroads right now, and so it gives that much more urgency to today, to what we're doing, and to you personally. And let me say a shout out to not just the people who are sitting in the room, but I know that this is also being watched on YouTube and will be used and echo beyond here. So hello, audience in the E-Universe as well. We were asked for a title of the talk. There's actually 3 or 4 of them, and I think it'll be useful to hit on a few just to ground you for where we're going. There's a lot of ground I want to cover today that sort of will take us on a journey. But I'll start with the end, which is you. One of the titles that was prescribed for the talk was Cities of the Future. So I just want to tell you that the future absolutely begins today, and you're driving it. And we'll land there. Why should the future begin today is because we have extraordinary choices to make to drive us out of very painful days that we're in now. And you are the most effective possible drivers for that, because you're the least addicted to the oil, the energy, the water, and the lifestyles that have gotten us into the trouble that we're into. And we're going to need your power, your vision, your voice, your passion to communicate, inspire, and lead a society that's looking for hope and that's looking for answers. And you're right in the right position to do that. So that's where we're going. I hope to give you some more story to ground this in reality, so I'm not just throwing slogans at you. If that sounded like a slogan, it'll get real. The other title I'm going to move back and show is it keeps working. This is the title of a talk I was asked to give just over a year ago at an emergency training for 100 engineers. They were gathered in the city of Seattle, but they were from London, New York, Chicago, and Seattle. Each of those cities is experiencing severe weather today that is actually endangering people's lives, and in fact, people are losing their lives. This workshop was with civil engineers who are responsible for protecting people's health and safety in these cities. And they're at the point, like, if somebody dies because the city hasn't protected them, then the city's liable. So it's very serious. They got to the point where they realized that climate change is affecting them today. They don't have the infrastructure or the tools to do what they used to do to protect people. And so they brought me in to do a 2-day workshop on how to engage nature and how to engage the community in protecting their cities. I mean, that's what the title says. But that is really a lot what this talk is about. It's part of what you are in a very powerful position to help do. These city engineers realized they could not build enough pipes and hard infrastructure fast enough to protect people in their cities. So a year and a half ago, people died in flooding in Seattle, urban flooding, for the first time in its history. Nothing had changed except severe weather. Now, this title, that workshop, happened in an old administration that was all about denial of climate change. It's upon us. The notion, though, that we're going to be experiencing the impacts in 30 years to 50 years is the problem that we have to throw away and wake up to what we're in the midst of now. And so, and I'm not going to take you down into more data that's depressing, because this story gets very, very empowering and exciting. But I wanted you to know where that was rooted. I didn't give him the power. Is that too dark? That's right. There's a dimmer, but it only turns my energy up or down. Just tell me if I need to moderate that. So the foundation of everything I'm going to be telling you about is our mission, which is to inspire, engage, and support the people of LA in taking personal responsibility for the urban environment, making this healthy, fun, safe, and sustainable, and to share our process. That means including our failures. Share our process as a model for the world, because there's a lot of cross-pollinating to do. I think that that's what you guys are about, including the inspiring people. How we do that, how we make a city sustainable, is we've got a vision of adapting Los Angeles to become a functioning community forest, literally retrofitting this city, returning its natural watershed functions, its natural functions, back to help save us, to help create a much more livable city. We can't simply unpave the 2/3 of Los Angeles that we've inherited and make things better. But when we say functioning community forest, that means restoring functioning community, and it is profoundly a social justice statement, and functioning forest, functioning ecosystem. So that may seem absurd, and it may seem like quite a dream, but imagine how nice it could be. This campus is actually a taste of what Los Angeles could be. You might think of the stuff we're talking about as how do we accelerate, rapidly accelerate the transition from a city which is one of the most unsustainable on the planet. It's one of the greatest sources of climate change and problems. how do we adapt this place where we are? We can do it through a profound integrated campaign of education, deeply engaging the community and leaders and agencies and corporations, rewiring, connecting people to their power, to their passion, to their truth, and getting them on the streets. We have systems to do that. Community forestry is this wonderful thing. I love Majora Carter's calling me a redwood. Well, obviously I'm not that tall. I'm getting wide, but the tree is also a meeting ground. It's where people come to meet. It has been always throughout the history, the natural history of this place. Even when the Spaniards came in, they planted these trees which became these huge meeting grounds. The ficus, and you see the giant one in Santa Barbara, and wherever there's a mission, they planted this huge tree for people to come and gather and do community meetings. But they're traditionally around the world a place where people can come and meet and regain their power. And so that's part of the metaphor of what we're doing. When every single neighborhood we begin a project, getting people together, leaving their politics, their race, their class behind, and discovering a new power of connecting based on their passion, their integrity. We have to take this city and all cities that have been managed as, well, they were designed before there was an understanding that there was an ecosystem. And they're managed, this city has been managed as a drain since it was designed, since the drainage system was put together by the Army Corps of Engineers. We have a living ecosystem, and we need to bring it back to life, and we can manage for that. And facilitated stakeholder guidance, well, it's how Martha and I met. It's literally connecting people so they have a voice, so they have an equal voice, so they're heard, and so their ideas, their messages are actually have an impact in changing and shaping policy. Together, we need to take a lead. Even with a new president, even with a more progressive, supportive population speaking out right now, the knowledge about climate change has been with us since the first Earth Day. It's been here for 40 years. There has been zero action at the federal level. Zero. Why is that? It's because policymakers are afraid to tell you that you have to change lifestyles. They only follow us. We are the leaders, they follow. We have to create a market, literally a market for policy change. We need to show that we're interested, that we're willing to do it before they will craft the laws, do the policies that we need to support us doing this. Because they know even with progressives, if they tell us what to do, we'll probably throw them out of office. So we're about creating a market. And hopefully you're beginning to get a little bit of a chill to see how much this has to do with you. Ultimately, we want to adapt LA to be LA 2.0 or 3.0. A completely new city, rooted in the city that's here. So I'll go back to Martha's story. I had just stuck this slide in. I did grow up, was born and raised here in LA in a very smoggy city in days not unlike today. Actually, smog's still not as bad as it was in the 50s. My parents used to send me to summer camp to escape the smog. And it was then that we learned that the forest was dying. And I'd grown up there and grew to love it as the place where we could actually play, where we could actually breathe. Down here in the 50s, before smog laws were passed, I don't have asthma, I don't have lung disease, I didn't as a kid, but it was so much to breathe after school that I would come home and breathe steam. My mom would turn on a pot of water, and I'd just stand in front of the stove and breathe that to be able to take a deep breath without having a cough. That's why those laws were passed. And in some respects, the air is better in LA. In some respects, some changes have made some things worse in terms of the amount of people who are dying from pollution from diesel now. But I grew to love the forest as a place where I could express myself and play and breathe and not be crippled over and coughing, as did my friends. So when we turned 15 and we learned from the Forest Service that the forest that had been filtering the air for us, producing fresh oxygen, was dying. And they said that by the year 2000, if all the trees kept dying at this pace, the whole forest would be gone by the year 2000. So this was 1970. That seemed like a lifetime or two away. It was 4 months after the first Earth Day, and we went, wow, we got to do something. And they said, well, there are smog-tolerant trees that you can plant. We've done the research. We found that if you filter out the smog, the native trees that are here don't all die, but there are other natives in smaller populations. The trees dying, you can check off your biology for this one. The ponderosa pines, the Jeffrey pines, which were the dominant species in the forest, they were dying. But the coulter pines, sugar pines, Sierra redwoods, all which were native, indigenous to the area, were not suffering, but they were tiny populations. So we started planting there, actually. So the parking lot was our camp. That's the only adjustment. It gets real into the city, and people do all kinds of fun extrapolations of our story. And that was a great one. And relevant, because you'll see that you were actually telling the truth today. But back then, we tore up this old truck parking lot at our camp, and we planted a bunch of trees, planted a meadow, and we saw, after 3 weeks worth of back-breaking work, that was probably the most fun of my life. 12 guys, 12 girls wearing bathing suit tops and overalls, and the guys, we were just, in our budding hormonal stage, and we spent 3 weeks swinging picks, breaking rocks, building walls. It looked, to the outside, except for our uniforms, it looked like prison labor. But after 3 weeks, this piece of dead land had sprouted, a meadow. And we stood there with all the campers in the camp and dedicated and watched birds return and squirrels, and they were eating the seeds, and we saw life return to this thing that was dead. And so 4 months after Earth Day, those dire warnings about what's happening, I went, I got to keep doing this. And I went back to the city and tried to go to school and found it extraordinarily irrelevant, 11th grade. And I was really fortunate that some of the parents in the school had created a public service preschool, alternative school, the first in LA Unified, so powerful that the district had to kill it. But I got 2 years of benefit where I got to drop into the program, and instead of going to class, they hooked me up. That was a valid term back then. They connected me with a grad student in biology from UCLA who taught me how to use the Biomed Research Library. We're talking 20 years before the internet, and helped me do research about smog-killing trees. And I went out to try to figure out what to do so kids from all over LA could get up to the mountains and have a similar experience of their power to begin healing this environment. And that was great. I spent 3 years trying things and failing and trying and failing. The first day I could drive, I borrowed my parents' car, and right after I got my driver's license on my 16th birthday, I drove down to the headquarters of Chevron USA, Standard Oil, met with the head of PR there, and told him, the forest is dying. I want to help save it. We've got these trees that are smog tolerant. You guys are running ads saying that you care about the environment. I believe you. Will you help? So I made a bunch of mistakes, like believing them, and going in there with an open heart. And the problem was, the guy was not comfortable with that. He said, there's no problem. Smog's not killing trees. If there's something killing the trees, it's the steel mill in San Bernardino, Kaiser Steel, and but it's not us. It's not the oil industry. We're making clean air. And anyhow, when I wouldn't budge and I handed him all the research papers, he actually thought, he saw a little revolutionary streak in me and said, what you need to do is organize the workers of Kaiser Steel to shut down the company until they clean up their air. And he laid out the campaign, how I should do it, where I should open an office. Totally got me sucked in. And then gave me an industry report on the air is getting better, paid for my parking, sent me out smiling. And he was done with the distraction. Took me the elevator 6 floors to get to the street and realize I'd been had, and I was devastated. Seriously, you're laughing, but I was nearly in tears. I was so pissed off. I thought, if that's what adults are going to do to somebody who opens their hearts and cares, I am not going to care. That's it. And I put the project down, the dream down, and went back to school and joined my friends. But seriously, it was several months of trying to bury that pain before the dream returned. And I thought, oh man, it's back. I don't want to do this, but I got to do it. And then I started thinking, okay, they're not going to do that to me again. And I tried. I put together some other ideas. I figured some other stuff out. Tried it, failed, quit. Tried again, failed, quit. For some reason, the dream would return. My parents thought that I was the least committed to anything during that high school period. But when I finished high school, got to college, thought I'm going to be normal. I'm going to stay in class and just focus on whatever I'm supposed to do, become a professional something. Because what I was toying with was there was no words for it, environmentalist. And it wasn't very safe. But after a semester, I was bored. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do this. I talked the head of the environmental studies program at Sonoma State College, where I was going to school, and letting me have independent study credit. Said, just keep a journal and go for it. And I took all the lessons that I had in my mind, because he said keep a journal, which I'd never done before. I just sat and outflowed the idea and the plan, which I started to execute. I found 20 summer camps. I wrote them all in the San Bernardino Mountains. I knew the forest was dying in all around their camps. They all agreed to take at least 1,000 trees each and plant them and care for them to start restoring the watershed and the forest. I found 20,000 trees to meet that need in a state nursery. Everything was perfect. Problem was the state required me to buy the trees from them to plant on federal land. And so that's good. I'll start trying to raise money. All I needed was $600, but you can think I was 17, 18, a freshman. $600-800 was a lot of money back then, since I was living on $10 a week for food. I couldn't get the money. And they said, well, you got about a week, because if these trees aren't sold, we have to plow them under to make room for next year's crop. And I went nuts. I started calling everybody I knew. I was getting nowhere. I went down to Los Angeles to try to talk to donors, and was not having any success. I mean, I didn't even know donors here. I was 18, but my brother had been in nonprofit. He introduced me to some people. And I checked in with the Department of Forestry and said, hey, hang on, I'm coming. They said, well, it's just about too late. The guy's on the tractor now. And I went, but you said I had another day. And they said, look, we got to plant the new seeds. I got pissed. And so here's the little spin to the accurate version. I called the LA Times and told them that the state was murdering the trees. I was not very credible as just a person saying that. So a reporter listened and he said, yeah, right, but I'll check it out. And he did. And he called me back saying, they are. Sit tight, we're going to do something. And it appeared that he actually got permission to then go to the governor's office, Governor Ronald Reagan, and say, the headline in tomorrow's paper is State Murders Baby Trees. What are you willing to do about that? And they did this very quickly, and the governor's office knew that was a problem and called the Department of Forestry, got the guy off the tractor. They flew his boss down to LA to meet with me the very next morning. They said, everyone loves what you're doing. We want to, we figured out a way to give you some trees. We want to make this a special project, and just calm down. And I said, great. And they said, well, here, we're going to give you 100 trees. I went, what? I need 20,000. And they said, well, you don't know what you're doing. You're just going to kill them, because you can't plant trees in summer, blah, 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 blah. So, we'll give you 100 trees, you'll learn your lesson, and, just be happy. And I went, I'm not going to kill those trees. Let me tell you what I know. And I laid out the plan, and they were stunned. And I tell you this because it is the critical difference between us making a difference and not. What happened is, for 3 years, every time I talked to their guys and told them what I wanted to do, they said, it won't work. I said, well, why not? Tell me how it would work. And I got a forestry education sitting at their feet. And so when I laid out the plan for how this could work, the boss and his assistant their jaws dropped and said, that is a totally viable plan. It'll absolutely work. And I said, well, great, 20,000 trees, please. And I went, it took a while to get the call, to get the guy off the tractor. We plowed a lot under. And I said, well, what do you got left? And he said, 8,000. I said, I'll take them. And they delivered them to my house. A few days later, I was a student living in a farmhouse in Sonoma County. They dropped 8 boxes, each with 1,000 trees, up the back of the truck. And the forester who dropped them off said, good luck, kid. And by the way, you got 2 hours to get them in refrigerators or they're dead. And you got 10 days to get them in pots or they're dead. They were in bundles, this tall, box, had to be kept dormant. And I know I'm going way deeper into this story, but I think it might be valuable, and then we'll zoom into the other stuff. Ultimately, I challenged the kids at Sonoma State to help join me in a potting party, and we, in 10 days worth of work, we got the trees potted. A developer who I'd interviewed for a geography class donated the soil. Local dairy donated milk cartons. We potted the trees up, listening to Grateful Dead nearly 24 hours a day, and I had them. And then the Times called and said, what happened? And I told them, and they then published this story that I just told you. They ended with the fuse to a missile, which was a quote from me saying, I've gone to big business, I've gone to government, I haven't gotten any help. Now I'm taking my project to the people. All I need is 50 cents per tree. And they put in my address. And my dad woke me up at 5 the morning that article ran and said, something's happened you should know about. Reporters started calling, and this has not stopped. That lit the fuse. The first person was a woman from Beverly Hills who drove over with a $500 check in her slippers to present it. The next day, a sack of mail arrived on my parents' front doorstep with 50-cent contributions. Within 3 weeks, we raised $10,000. But the average contribution was like under $10, mostly from kids. People planting trees in memory of their grandparents planting trees in memory of kids they'd lost. It was unbelievable. So that is the basis for our work. That was the story. And now I really have to fly. From that, we've grown. We started planting in the forest and then working in communities. But we've continued always to reach out and engage people. This was the first urban forest run. We needed to take a concept that didn't exist, urban forestry, and get it in use in the population. And we put it on the front page of the Times by closing down a freeway and letting people run on it. That's the cover photo from the LA Times. And the banner underneath it was the first urban forest run. But who would think that you could close down a freeway? We did it to show that what we could do if we all came together. And the 5,000 people, a bunch of them actually planted trees along the freeway, and there's a beautiful canopy there. This is Earth Day 1980, Mayor Tom Bradley, just for the sake of history. We ran a campaign to plant 1 million trees in LA before the Olympics. We recruited celebrities like this was Gregory Peck, who was our spokesperson, to help wake people up, shake people up, that you are the celebrities of today. You have the voices that people are going to listen to, not old fogies like he or he. But I didn't have gray hair back then. Ultimately, our work evolved. Instead of us being heroic and planting trees for people, we found that people didn't own the results. The trees not as many trees as I would like to see lived. In fact, the national average lifespan of an urban tree in America today is 7 years. Why that is because government agencies and even community agencies do trees on people instead of with people. And we began what's called the citizen forestry movement. Instead of planting trees for people, we find people who have a dream, who want to, or who are pissed off, or who are inspired, but they want to make a change. And we give them the training to take their dream, bring their neighbors together, share that dream, get everybody together as a community and take action. And the result of that is our trees, after 5 years, 95% are alive because people are watering them and protecting them. We built one of the largest environmental education programs in the United States. These kids actually helped make LA City's recycling program succeed at a time when the country was getting 10% participation. And by the way, this is the birth of the environmental justice movement. LA when this started in the late 1980s, LA produced enough trash to fill the Coliseum every 2 weeks. The way to deal with that was to burn it. And the city invented the Lancer Project, 7 incinerators for South LA and East LA. And it was going to be producing toxic air. Bob Gottlieb, I think, was involved from UCLA in helping organize the communities, but Mothers of East LA and Concerned Citizens of South Central grew out of that to stop the incinerators. Then the city had no option except to consider recycling, which, by the way, they considered recycling an unacceptable lifestyle change. People won't do it. And they had plenty of evidence to show that people wouldn't do it. Only 10% of people in other cities that had tried it participated, except Seattle that got 30%. We said to the city, we'll use our education program to inspire the kids to change their families. And to the city's credit, they let us do it. 2 years' time, we reached 250,000 kids out of 600,000 in LA Unified with the specific intent to reach critical mass of thought. Kids went home, taught their families, threw trash on the floor, sorted it. When the program rolled out, LA participated at the rate of 90%. It was a revolution that had never been seen before. It's made LA's program the most powerful in the country. It was the kids. We've done disaster relief, pulling thousands of people together to protect homes during El Nino storms, which were probably early onset climate change that we just didn't know about then. LA had its own mini Katrina back in 1980, 78 and 80, when our storms were so great, the fire department, police department could not get to people and help them. We pulled together thousands of volunteers. Fire department and police cooperated with us, turned over their dispatches, but it was ham radio operators, students, and four-wheel drive clubs who came together in a unique combination of entities working together to save the city. We do restoration of the mountains, especially areas burned to the point where they will not come back on their own, that need an assist to restart watershed functionality. And we have a huge program now, this is one that you can participate in, where thousands of people are returning to the Angeles and the San Bernardino National Forest and the Santa Monica Mountains and doing some of this hand work that can only be done by hand, restoring life, including putting microscopic fungi and native grasses in the ground. We have a profound fruit tree program, just finished distributing 12,000 apple trees, peaches, plums, nectarines to families, low-income families throughout this community. We need to take it deeper and engage through diabetes clinics and all of that. We're going there, there's opportunity to really connect people to their resources. These fruit trees produce fruit within a couple months of being planted. It's really neat to hear from priests of the churches that we've distributed through that their parishioners months later brought them apple pies and peach pies as a result. Here's an example of what the work looks like on the street. This was Martin Luther King Boulevard in 1990. Notice that yellow blotch, which is a street sign on the left of the screen. I don't have my laser pointer. That same sign is there. That's the same exact place last year. So this was it, 1990, just before King's birthday, when 2 days after that shot, 3,000 people came out from all over LA. 1,000 of them we had pre-trained, so they knew what to do. They broke in and lined the 7 miles of that street and planted it in 3 hours. But the trees are alive today because somebody from each block agreed to adopt each tree. And we came back like a spark plug every month for 10 years to bring people out to water and protect the trees so they own them. So that's happening all over this community, but the magnitude of our challenges outstrips that, and it keeps arguing that we don't make a difference. So I wanted to get back to the fundamental basis of this talk. This is usually the first slide. And, whoa, okay, I gotta really put the pedal to the metal. This is a native oak tree, and you've got some around this campus. This lecture series is about energy, and I'm about to link it to energy, but it's actually all about water. And water and energy in this state are profoundly inseparable. So we look at a tree like that, and we see beauty. You may or may not see infrastructure. And by the way, I stuck this in here because whenever I give this presentation, people go, well, you got a great name, or the presentation from here on. You got a great name, but it's got nothing to do with trees. So people aren't appreciating you because you're calling yourselves tree people. And I said, I'm failing as an educator if you're saying that. So this is a tree, looks pretty, habitat, all kinds of things, but it is the basis of our whole infrastructure and life support system. Amongst the things we don't see is volume and canopy. And so that tree, that individual portrait is of a tree 100 feet in diameter, so it's a nice, super old tree. But every tree does this to varying degrees. Mostly what we don't see is what's underground. So underneath a tree in a natural environment is more volume, more soil. There's mulch, there's humus, there's compost, humus, leaves, twigs, critters. That's habitat. That space, 100 feet across, 5 feet deep, is loaded with stuff that you might not care about. But what's in there, from microscopic organisms to snakes and rabbits and all kinds of critters, they're all working really hard to clean the water and store the water and then put it underground, and they've been doing it since the planet evolved. That is our water supply. What happens is the canopy of a tree captures rain and slows it and slowly releases it to the ground, and also water flowing from surrounding areas flows into this space. That space is on average 5 feet deep. The capacity of that space is 57,000 gallons in a flash flood, according to the U.S. Forest Service Research Lab. That's an extraordinary number when you think about it, because that water is captured like a sponge, held, treated, cleaned. This is what produces pristine water, how nature has always done it. And then the water doesn't just sit there, it goes down. It goes down to recharge the aquifer, our groundwater supply. That's how we've always had water on the planet. So this becomes our icon for our healing tool, our superhero partner. We're the other half of the superhero. If you take this tree out, what happens? Somebody tell me, what happens to that water if that tree's not there and you get a flash flood? It runs off, it flows off, it floods off. Somebody gets flooded, maybe hurt, maybe killed down below. That water gets lost from the aquifer. So you've created a perpetual beginning of a drought cascade. You've lost your water. You created a flood. That water didn't just flow off, it took the soil with it over time. How many of you have heard about or read or studied the book Collapse by Jared Diamond, professor at UCLA? A few of you. It basically documents this, that every society that's collapsed in the world started by losing its trees. And the only ones that saved themselves are the ones who remembered and started reforesting. It's not different today. So we use that as the icon of the beginning of the healing that we need to do in this city, in the radical shift. Now, not all trees are that powerful, but all trees are powerful. So not only do we need to put trees in the ground, but we need to start mimicking them, because 2/3 of Los Angeles is paved. And I want you to see that is a circle the same size as that tree, 100 feet in diameter. And this is sitting in that circle. And this is technology that mimics trees. That's a cistern. And its capacity is almost 250,000 gallons of water. In fact, this just reminded me that this was the alternative opening to my talk. So, a month ago, our mayor declared a stage 3 drought emergency in Los Angeles. 2 days later, the governor declared a drought emergency. On the same day that the mayor declared the drought emergency, it was raining. And TreePeople was and this is at our headquarters, that cistern was full, and that meant that we had an entire year's worth of water to irrigate our entire center, many, many acres of hillside. We were actually able to virtually unplug from the grid and be water independent, because it rained so much in this city. And what did we do with the water? We threw it away. So we used that, the tree, to inspire technology, and not just rely on trees, but this partnership of technology and trees as part of the vision of retrofitting. Why is this critical? From a climate perspective, the green is LA's water supply footprint. We bring in water from all those areas, from Montana down through the Colorado River, up north, from the back of the Sierras. This requires, to bring water to LA, is the single largest use of electricity in the state of California. The single largest use of electricity in the state of California is to bring water to LA. Think about that. We're the 6th largest economy on the planet. It's an extraordinary and inappropriate amount of energy to bring us water, considering how much we waste. So this is LA after a rainstorm. By the way, when my alarm goes off, that's 40 minutes. I've given myself a 5-minute lead, so I'll release it. This is the LA River after a rainstorm. LA throws away 7.6 billion gallons of water every time it rains an inch. I'll repeat it, 7.6 billion gallons of water. It will be on the test. So, for every time it rains an inch. Because we have sealed the land and our policies, our laws, our building codes require us to throw the water away and pollute it. That water is at least half the water we need. It's pretty crazy. So let's look at the tree in a different way. When I talked about integrated infrastructure systems, when you take the tree out, you got to replace what it did with a bureaucracy and an infrastructure. So we took the tree out, you have to create a flood control agency to protect people, and they build pipes. And you have to create a water supply agency, and they build pipes. And you have to create a pollution control agency for the pollution that was going down the drain. And because there's a whole bunch of other waste products, you've got to have the tree naturally composts and digests. You've got to have a waste management agency, and on and on and on. And this is what we've got in LA today. Can you? I'm going to throw it to somebody. So can you read these? Oh, cool. Good, thank you for the large screen. So, rough numbers, flood control, all that water that you saw, we spend $500 million every year on LA County flood control, so they can throw away the water, right? Their job is to protect us, and that's why they did that. Disintegrated, we're a drain, so they built drainage. $500 million, and they're throwing away roughly $500 million worth of water. DWP spends over $1 billion a year now bringing in water and distributing it. We need them. And using all that energy. Up on top, sanitation, the largest budget in LA after police and fire. 40% of the solid waste stream is all that mulch and that lovely stuff that the tree is mulching. We throw it away. Most of our gardens are not mulched. We spend close to $100 million a year right now in capital improvements in our stormwater system. Air quality, who knows how much we're spending. Economic development. So that is a map of what happened when we took the tree out. It is a map of unsustainability, because what you're seeing is a hemorrhage of cash, a hemorrhage of resources, a hemorrhage of humanity. When we talk about bringing back the ecosystem functions, we're telling these people to start working together and collaborating, doing things that we were learning in class, hopefully. But we, as activists, need to hold government accountable and have them move to this world, which is totally feasible. What we've done is just bring these people together and realize that if we start harvesting the water, managing LA as a watershed ecosystem, all of a sudden you start capturing the water, using the mulch, reducing your costs, right at the core, creating sustainable jobs. Now I'm going to need silence for 4 more minutes. There are lots of consequences for not doing that. You know, we learned just 2 years ago that 5,400 people died per year in Southern California from air pollution. And the other public health consequences for mismanaging the ecosystem are huge, but we've always ignored them as a people. We've considered them externalities. But now public health care is 30% of the state's budget. The prison economy is more than 10%, over $10 billion a year, to house creative, passionate, powerful humans who have been told there's nothing for you to do. The cost of energy, all that stuff. We have plenty of motivation to begin harvesting the resources by managing LA as an ecosystem. So I pulled a bunch of agencies together, them reluctantly at first, and to show that it was technically and economically feasible to retrofit LA. And it happened after the LA riots, when the Rodney King unrest in 1990, when we were trying to bring in federal funds for jobs. And the sociologists studying LA basically said we needed 50,000 jobs for urban youth, for chronically underemployed urban youth, to mitigate the poverty that created the violence. And Rebuild LA was not focused on that. It was focused on rebuilding buildings. I started trying to find the money, which was $500 million a year. And what happened is the Army Corps of Engineers showed up with LA County Flood Control, having discovered that we'd so overpaved LA that we needed to spend $500 million putting concrete walls on the LA River to prevent it from overflowing. I went, wow, there's $500 million right there. That could be jobs. I said, hey, we don't need more concrete, we need less. They didn't understand, and so I had to build a demonstration project. These people got behind it, and we brought 100 of the best minds in landscape architecture and engineering, sustainable, to LA to design the retrofit, because we found that LA was going to spend not just $500 million, but about $20 billion over the next years in new water supply, new wastewater treatment, new flood control, all disintegrated, none of it yielding sustainability. And by the way, we're repeating that mistake with the stimulus package. So we did pull these people together. We created consensus on possible designs, a way to retrofit every home, every business, every industry, every piece of land. It means slightly adapting the yard, putting in a cistern, having your yard be water efficient, capturing the rainfall and storing it. I'll come back to the video if we have time. We started to retrofit schools to show just how possible this was. Here's a school out in Pacoima that flooded every time it rained. We taught the kids how they could be engineers, find the pain, both too much sun, pollution on their campus. They dreamed, they planned. LADWP is so incredible that they listened and put up $250,000 to help build this. This is the construction, 40 feet under their schoolyard. Basically, we're mechanically putting in a tree. The same thing that happens in the roots, these are like dome-shaped, huge drain connected to that filter that cleans all the water, and then all the water goes into the ground. This was the school before. This is basically it today. So going from a source of skin cancer and disease and pain for the kids, they got a park. This park doesn't use water. It is part of the city's water supply, stormwater system, and all of that. We've done this on several schools, 2 schools. We've brought it to a whole watershed in the North Valley, Sun Valley, which has a perpetual flooding problem. And the county was going to spend $50 million on a storm drain to drain this whole area. When they saw that we had proven they could work technically and economically, there'll be another story for another time, or you can download it. They decided to partner with us and said, you can have the money to put in a forest instead of pipes. And that took, by the way, a 6-year community-based watershed planning effort. We couldn't impose it from the outside. So 6 years long, going to PTA meetings, churches, in a community that was 85% Spanish speaking. Multiple agencies got together, from air quality to flood control to city engineering, sanitation, met with the community, and we planned. And the result of this was incredible. After 6 years, we had an approved plan, because the community approved it, and an approved, authorized environmental impact report. And the real miracle is it came out with a $200 million budget instead of a $50 million budget. The reason why the city and the county were willing to adopt a $200 million, that sounds like a failure, right? Like 4 times more expensive, but no, because I'm going to stretch just a little bit in time here. This is a cost-benefit model that shows what happens if you bring all the agencies together to collaborate. These numbers are a little inflated, but if we put the watershed in here, instead of just costing $50 million for a pipe, it puts $172 million worth of water back in the ground. Saves the city over $30 million in not collecting greenways. The total benefit back to the city and the county of this program is $300 million. So they're willing to spend $200 million to get $100 million back in savings. The process is under construction. The first thing we did was retrofit a park in Sun Valley, captures the water, puts it underground. This is what it looked like. Water flows, this is how it works. Water flows into the community, clean. This environmental justice zone, because water gets polluted in the streets, hits the park. Now we clean it and put it underground. Up to 40% of the 8,000 homes in Sun Valley will be retrofitted to be functioning watershed. So lots of changes have happened over the years as a result of this process. LA County Flood Control actually, having learned from us, changed their mission to watershed management, changed their name. The city followed suit. Major policy changes have emerged. People were willing to pass bonds. The city of LA actually followed the lead that we did and brought us in to facilitate another 6-year-long process where it did its first ever integrated watershed plan. Instead of building a new $5 billion sewage treatment plant, it's freeing up the money to green schools, green communities, capture the water. So since we began demonstrating that LA could be a watershed instead of a drain, we've built 6 demonstration projects, 2 schools, 2 parks, 1 house, 1 intersection. These 6 little projects with cisterns and capture devices and trees and mulch, they capture 1.25 million gallons of rainfall every time it rains an inch. Just 6. Imagine if we retrofitted the 1 million+ homes in Southern California and our communities, that we could capture more than half of the water we need. And if we retrofit the yards and reduce their water use by 70% and adopt gray water, we start getting close to water independence. And that water is there for fires, for quakes, for disasters. And we don't have any of that right now. That's the vision. That's the one I'm inviting you to join us in planning. How we move forward, the work that you, no matter what your dream is, no matter whether you work with us or whatever, the change has to happen. And you're part of it. But the place to focus that is not yet part of the conventional reality, but it is a part of Occidental's DNA, this is where I'm concluding, is to reach out to the community and deeply educate ourselves, our families, our communities, and get them engaged. Engage people because we need to prepare, protect. We really can, right here, draw the line on climate change. This city, being one of the worst offenders, could turn that around. And I don't care what action you take, whether you're protesting, you're demonstrating, you got to lead the change. So, this is where we end. This is the beginning. What are you going to do? Thank you.